Hello and welcome to your review of the year show for the 2025 F1 season. Pear-shaped, sweet, shiny, rich in vitamin C, can help reduce inflammation. I've learnt more about and said the word papaya more times than I think possible this year. So where better to come to you from than the home of all things papaya. Welcome to the McLaren Technology Centre, headquarters of the 2025 Formula One World Constructors and Drivers Champions. We're on the boulevard surrounded by McLarens from history and beyond, and I am joined by a man who thrives when things go pear-shaped. Is the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, Harry. Nice introduction.
Thank you very much. And a driver who, just like a papaya, is sweet on the inside, but difficult to eat. I'm gonna stick with that one. I couldn't find anything else to work with that, so I've gone down the rabbit hole now. It's Sam Bird, former McLaren Formula E driver, British racing star. How are you, Sam?
I mean, that's shocking, but hi.
Shocking, but we'll take it and run with it because I ran out of papaya things to say. Anyway, we've made it to the end of another long season. Andrew, are you a little bit tired?
I'm still standing, just about, Harry. Yeah.
What about you, Sam? I mean, end of an era, isn't it? Goodbye to ground effect cars. And a little birdie told me we're saying goodbye to DRS, aren't we?
We are indeed. Goodbye, DRS. Goodbye, ground effect. Some people are happy about this, others not so much. But you know what? It's been what an era, and what an era it's been for this team, McLaren.
It certainly has. We'll gloss over the on-track action in Abu Dhabi. We've already reviewed that because it wasn't an absolute corker, was it, from start to end? So we'll look back at the season as a whole. Over the course of the next hour, we're going to hear from some very special guests, including the new world champion Lando Norris and McLaren team principal Andrea Stella. But there is only one place to start, as you say, Sam, Lando Norris and McLaren. I mean, your overall reflections on this season, one thing I think we've taken away from right at the end is he's won this sort of his way, the Lando Norris way. And it's been fairness throughout, and he's come out on top and won it by only 2 points at the end.
Yeah, there were times when I thought he wasn't going to win it, and then there were times when I thought he had it in the bag, and then there was obviously disqualifications late on in the racing calendar, and it had a nice feel about it this year. You didn't know which way it was going to go. It was a proper battle between three heavyweights in Formula One now, being Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, and then the eventual winner, Lando Norris. And I thoroughly enjoyed the year. You didn't know which way it was going to go. The fight back from Max was stunning. He eventually came up 2 points short, and Lando just got there and had the amount of points needed when it mattered. But boy, oh boy, what a fight we were shown.
It was extraordinary, really, Harry, wasn't it? Because for two-thirds of the season, it looked like Lando Norris really wasn't going to win it. You know, his teammate, Oscar Piastri, was in much better shape. And we all talk about Verstappen's comeback, and it was extraordinary. But Norris's comeback was kind of at the same time. And it wasn't overlooked but people were really kind of talking about Verstappen so much. And then suddenly, Norris is in the lead of the championship. And it's like, oh, right. And then it all happened. And then it got really, really shaky at the end. They had a really, really difficult last 2 or 3 races. Looked like it could fall away from them again. Held it together in Abu Dhabi, and Sam's absolutely right. It was a corker of a season in terms of the ebbs and flows between those 3 drivers.
It seemed to me like the difference between Oscar and Lando this year was that Oscar, if you give him high-speed corners on a relatively high grip track, he was the king out of those two. He would beat Lando in those conditions. But when you went to certain venues where the grip level and the micro and macro was such that it doesn't deliver as much grip, Lando was far and away quicker than Oscar at those tracks, and Oscar couldn't get to grips with them as well as Lando.
I like the Norris story this year because it's coming back from adversity. You know, he was really struggling. He was the quicker McLaren driver considerably in 2024. He was the one who sort of had a sniff of a title challenge then. It was never really that realistic, but he had a sniff of it. Then this year, he came in as favourite, obviously as the quicker McLaren driver in the best car as it started the season. But he just wasn't getting on with the car. And it took him quite a while to come to terms with what was going on and then to work out what the process might be by which he could begin to get back to where he knew he could be and then actually start to inch through that process. And that's what kind of happened through the course of the season. And then he really hit the ground running from well, it built progressively, but it sort of started to convert in terms of results after the summer break.
Yeah, I want to pick up on some of those, I suppose, pivotal moments and see how right they were in sort of structuring Lando Norris's building of a title. Because as we've said, he won in Australia, but it was a difficult start to the season. Piastri won 4 of the opening 6 races. And actually, Andrew, you've mentioned this quite a lot throughout the year. Lando wasn't happy with the general feeling, that the bite from the front end of that McLaren. And then we got to Canada, and McLaren changed something on the front end. But then it was sort of a bit day and night. He felt improved, but then, of course, he crashed into the back of his teammate in the race. So how crucial was that weekend for Lando Norris in the long run?
Well, actually, as we're going to hear we're going to play an interview with Lando Norris in a few minutes, and you'll hear in that interview where I think actually the turning point was for him. Yes, the suspension change in Canada was aimed at improving the feel, and it was a real micro change, and he could hardly feel it, but it did help him start moving forward. But really, he said in the interview that the turning point was Monaco, which was the race before Canada. He'd been struggling up to that point, and he hadn't been that good in Monaco, and he nailed a pole lap there, and from there won the race, and that's what gave him the confidence that he could get it done. And then from that point, it was about building with the team, working really hard behind the scenes to get the car to a place, get his head more importantly to a place where he kind of came to accept that the car wasn't always going to feel the way he wanted it to be, but he just had to live with that and find a way through it. And once he'd started on that path, both the working path and the mental path, then he was really on a very positive trajectory.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've teed it up nicely there. So I reckon we should hear from Lando Norris now, who, as Andrew said, sat down with the BBC's F1 correspondent following his title triumph in Abu Dhabi.
I just never thought at times that it was possible. So for me to then do that for myself, to kind of go, you're wrong, you can do it, it's a pretty incredible feeling to have for yourself. And I wouldn't say I'm a very selfish person, but I think I've also learned at times I almost have to be more selfish with some of these feelings and thoughts, and I need that to almost make me a better and stronger driver. So yeah, like it's just nice to almost make myself have more confidence in myself. But I often only do that when I prove it to myself, and I've always had that thought of like, the next step is such a big leap. Am I ever going to be able to perform at the level I need to perform at? And I have more doubts than positive thoughts at those times. But I've also changed a lot this season. I also feel through the year I've been able to be in a much better place, be a lot more confident in myself, change my whole approach and mentality, and a lot of that led to the end result.
You started the season and you started as favourite, but your teammate Oscar Piastri was outperforming you for the first few races. Can you talk about the process of getting better? I mean, we know the car was changed slightly, but I've heard it was more of a sort of mental approach of you accepting that was going to be the case and working out what to do about that. Is that true? And if so, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's two halves. There's obviously the how can I make the car more suited to me? And there's also the how can I just drive whatever I get given. And I'm always a lot more focused on the what can I just do? What do I need to do to be a better driver? But there's two halves, and you've got a whole team of over 1,000 people that are there to try and make the car quick, first of all. And obviously many of them there also to try and then help me be the best driver I can be. But it was a mixture of things. It was a mixture of me just not getting the most out of the car because it changed quite a bit from the previous year. Having the half of me going, I'm just not doing a good enough job. And also getting a kick from Andrea, and Andrea's seen a lot of things in his career in Formula One. He's been with some incredible people, learned a lot of things, and always forced me a lot more to kind of push them in like, guys, I need more of this. I want more of that. How can you help me here? How can you? Which is never my first thought. It's always why am I not doing a good enough job? So I had to work on both sides. I had to be guys, I need some more things from the car to allow me to just drive more naturally. But there's also then the flip side of how can I, whatever car I get given, how can I perform to the best of my ability every single time whether I like it or not, whether I like the car, it suits me, doesn't suit me, whatever it is. And I just got very frustrated when I wasn't doing a good enough job. Also because I knew what was on the line. I knew it was a chance to fight for the World Championship. So when I wasn't doing a good enough job, I was pretty downbeat about it. I'm not going to just come in and go, yeah, it just wasn't that good, but I'll try again. It hurts me when I do a bad job, and then I also feel like I don't do a good enough job for my engineers, my team, and that kind of thing. So that hurts a lot inside, and at some points that just starts to have a bigger negative effect on me, pre-races, pre-qualifyings, and then it kind of gets into a spiral. So I worked with a lot of people outside of the world of Formula One in order to have a better approach mentally, cope with all of these things better, allow me to drive like I can, drive like Lando can. And that's been our thing this season that we try to work on, is just trying to not make me a faster driver, just allowing me to drive at the ability that I can drive at. And at times sounds like quite a simple thing, but when you then bring both of these bits together, the team trying to help me out a bit and another team trying to help me out from both sides, having a car and having me perform at the ability I can, then you started to see that run that I went on after that.
Do you surprise yourself?
I think in reflection, I surprise myself. When I step back and realize at times what I've been able to achieve, some of the laps I've been able to put together in qualifyings, some of my races like Mexico, and like those ones where I just felt in another little world. I could just go out and be so me, be so relaxed, and perform quite easily, better than everyone else. So, yeah, I would say I do. I would say sometimes I surprise myself, but that's certainly a good thing.
People who are close to you in the team talk a lot about development, your personal development particularly. Yeah. Now, all the very best drivers work on mitigating their weaknesses and what have you, but very few of them talk about it in the way that you do. Why do you?
Great question. I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know why. Sometimes I tell you guys as much stuff as I do. Sometimes, I get told I shouldn't, and sometimes, I probably do tell too much or reveal too much, and people can see vulnerabilities in that and so forth. But, and maybe at times that's a mistake. But at the same time, at least I'm being truthful to my own self. If I'm doing a bad job, I tell myself I'm doing a bad job, and I certainly have people around me telling me the truth about things. What I hate the most is the opposite, is doing a bad job and someone going, that's all right, you'll be fine, things will just get better, because it's just not the case. So, I hate that kind of mentality and approach, and I've certainly not been brought up in that way. My people around me have certainly not been like that. It's very much a brutal honesty, which has made me the person I am today. But I'm also just, I think, quite an open, honest, will just say what I believe. And I know that not everyone's going to believe what I might say or think I'm telling the truth or agree with what I say sometimes. But at least you're just getting me, and you're getting me for what I am. And of course, along the way, I always try and learn to improve and be a better person at the same time.
Now, this year you won Monaco, you won Silverstone, and you won the World Championship.
Yeah.
What else is there left to do?
They're really the best runs. Just downhill from here. I would have loved to make my life a bit easier and win it just earlier next time. But it's always more exciting when it kind of goes down to the final race, final few laps. It's more exciting for everyone, for you guys, most of all. But I won ones that, again, people have dreamt of winning. Like, they're some of the most incredible ones. The lap I did in Monaco in quali, like, was the only other time, probably in the last 10 years, that I cried a little bit over something. Because there I proved myself wrong. It was one other moment this season that I proved myself wrong. Because I had that bad run of results, I just couldn't perform in qualifying. Qualifying's always been my strong suit, my best. Yeah, it's been my strength since I was in karting. All my qualifying results are my thing, and they weren't at the beginning of the season. So when I went to the hardest track to do a qualifying lap in, I turned off my delta for the first time that weekend, so I couldn't see if I was on a better lap, worse lap, whatever it was. It's not been my best track in the past. For me to go there and put that lap I put in at the end of qualifying was one of the best moments of my career, in a way, because it was the time I almost doubted myself the most ever, in the most important season that it turned out to be. So, but that one lap, 1 minute, 9 seconds, was all it needed for me to flip everything and turn that thought of, I just don't know if I got this, to, oh, I can definitely do this. And that was a pivotal moment for me up here.
Okay. Final question. What do you do for the next few weeks, and what do you take from this year into next year?
Just spend some time. Try be normal. Honestly, try forget this season. Try and forget a little bit what we've been able to achieve together. Forget that I drive in Formula One. I don't want to forget what we've achieved this season, but just go live a normal few days of the year, and go play some golf and do some normal things, and that's it. And then by the time you know it, we're going to be starting the next season already. So I take a lot out of this year. I take plenty of things that I know I could have done better. I should have done better, but I did what I had to. In the end of it, it was crazy close. And yeah, 2 points is all it was to Max. That's pretty insane, especially when he was so far back halfway through the year. But yeah, what do I take? I take that I can do it. I do have what it takes. I had my flaws, I had my mistakes, but I'm confident, and I have the confidence now that I can look at them, review them, analyze them, not make them again, and do even better next season.
Lando Norris there. I mean, Sam, he sounds so reserved and almost like a normal person who's just achieved something remarkable. It must take a while to sink in, but, is this the beginning of a lot more to come for Lando? Potentially,
but I think a lot stems on how this team now moves forwards and focuses their 2026 work, because it's all change, and we don't know who's going to be the best yet. It's so exciting. Obviously, going forwards with being constructors champions, they will have less wind tunnel time than everybody else, which when there's a new era of Formula One dawning, it's going to be quite challenging for them. But I think they stopped work on the 2025 car pretty early on in the season. I think it wasn't long after Silverstone where it was, right, we're going to stop this project, we're going to be focusing on 26. I imagine that they've done enough works to be super competitive for 26, but we just don't know. If they're not competitive, we might think that might be his only chance. But I'm hoping that this team has done enough that it gives Lando and Oscar the cars to fight for many more world championships to come.
Well, look, a title is built over a season, isn't it? And I was trying to think on my way here, sort of some of those standout moments for Lando Norris this year, and I'm just wondering if the two of you have any in particular.
I think Monaco, as what Andrew's just said. I think Monaco was really big for Lando's confidence and his ability to go, right, I can get this done. I also think winning the British Grand Prix, albeit fortuitously, was big. And then form later on in the year as well. Sao Paulo, for example, I thought that was a big weekend as well.
Andrew?
I think Mexico was the big statement win, wasn't it? That was the one where the championship lead changed hands. So it was an actual physical change in terms of the championship, but he was so convincing over that weekend. That's when he really began to look like a world champion in waiting.
On the other hand, I would say that Oscar will look back and look at Baku as a really difficult weekend, a weekend where, you know, even if he wasn't driving at his best, he should have been picking up 10 or more points. And that probably cost him a real fight at this World Championship.
Well, you've mentioned Oscar there. I think we should probably, doff our cap to him, because only in his third Formula One season, and to be able to take it all, yes, he had the best car, but to be taking it all the way to the wire, three-way fight, ultimately he finished third in the championship. But one thing I think we've noticed from Oscar over the last couple of years is his rate of development year on year has been massive. I remember, was it last year we were talking about how his time management needs to improve, and then boom, suddenly it has. This year, he's still not the complete package, but if he carries on that same rate of development into 2026, surely he's going to be another huge contender and come back fighting.
Oh yeah, if McLaren deliver the car, Oscar's going to be right up there fighting for this World Championship. It's so close between them now. I think, yeah, Oscar's got a little bit more development to do. But Lando will probably say the same on his driving. But I think if Oscar can work a little bit at these lower grip, slow speed corners, then it's going to be neck to neck between the two of them.
It was the quality of Piastri that actually, ironically, made Norris get better in a way, because obviously after Zandvoort, where Piastri won and Norris had the retirement with the fuel line failure, and Piastri took a 34-point lead, that's when it looked like Norris's positive trajectory started. Actually, as I explained earlier, it started much earlier than that. But in terms of results, it was very clear from that point on. And so people assumed that Norris had said, oh, well, I've not got any pressure anymore. I've not got anything to lose, so I can just go for it. He said, actually, at the end of the season, that's not what happened at all. He looked at that result and thought, oh, my goodness, I'm 34 points behind a guy who's really, really good. I've really got to start working even harder. And so that just added to the momentum that he was already building himself. And that speaks a lot to Piastri's quality. Let's not forget that, as I said, he was definitely in Norris's shadow last year. He had a couple of really good results, but Norris was the dominant McLaren driver, really. So to come into this season as strongly as he did, and he was chasing Norris all the way in Australia before they had that sort of double spin. He was unlucky at that point, actually. He went further off the track than Norris did when they had that moment when the rain hit. But from that moment on, he went on a really, really strong run. He looked impregnable, invincible almost, so solid, so composed. And we were all talking, who is this guy? But he then showed, obviously, as Sam was saying, definite fallibility later on in the year. That Baku race weekend influenced, he's admitted since, by the sort of team order switcheroo in Monza, which was the weekend before. But you can't allow that sort of stuff to get into your psyche when you're racing in Formula One. You've got to be absolutely on it the whole time, in the way that Verstappen was this year. So he's got to work on that. It was like someone else was in the car in Baku. 3 crashes and a jump start in one weekend for a guy.
Unrecognisable. Yeah,
for a guy who looked like he could do no wrong for most of the season up to that point. So yeah, lots of little things to work on. But but it was both of them. It was a story of development, and I think for both of them, there's a sense of, right, okay, well, they're not very old. Norris is 26, Piastri's 24, is it? I think they've definitely got room to improve, so they could just keep getting stronger if they can carry on that trajectory together.
But what a signing Oscar Piastri's been for this team. Just think, 3.5 years ago, he was still signed to Alpine. Oh. And we had that whole fallout, didn't we?
I'd like to see a parallel universe right now.
It goes to show you put the right driver in the right car at the right time and watch them develop and watch them flourish into a championship challenging driver. I mean, can you imagine Oscar Piastri now if he was stuck in the Alpine? We wouldn't be speaking and saying amazing, incredible things about him. He'd be stuck at the back of the grid scoring very limited points.
I think they finished both Alpine drivers last in that last Grand Prix, and right at the bottom of the Constructors' Championship. How quickly things can change in Formula One. But I think Piastri will be certainly one to bounce back hard. Actually, just from a mindset point of view, Sam, how does he go into the off-season now. It's one of the shortest off-seasons I think we've ever had in Formula One, so there's not a lot of time to sort of reset. I feel like he's got the character, though, to be able just to get up the next morning and carry on.
I think he's going to listen to the Chequered Flag podcast and really listen to what Andrew Benson has said and go, right, these are the areas that I need to work on. No, look, he'll be... look, I'd be lying if I said that I think he'll be a bit disappointed. Of course he will be. He was fighting, he led the World Championship for the most part of the season and then relinquished it towards the end. And I think, there will be some difficult times mentally for him over the Christmas period, but he can only let that disappointment last for so long. Then it'll be a case of, right, park that, lessons need to be learned, we'll move on, I'll improve, and then I'll crack on with next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what he comes back fighting with. We'll talk a bit more McLaren later on, and we are hoping to hear, and we will hear from the McLaren team principal, Andrea Stella. I'm just spying down the boulevard. Not here yet, although there was a lot of people here a moment ago, wasn't there? It felt like we're in the middle of a sort of school trip at one point. We are right in the boulevard, so a proper walkway and lots of tours going on, even towards the end of the day as we are recording this. Dare I switch things up and talk about another team now? I think we have to talk about Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Drama everywhere you look this year for Red Bull, Andrew, on track and off it. Decent start when it came to actual performance of the car, but it fell off quickly. What have you made of Red Bull's season as an overall arc?
Well, it's been extraordinary, hasn't it? They were winning races, but only on quick circuits at the beginning of the year. Then they had a really difficult patch through the middle as McLaren really found their feet. And Verstappen was talking as if it was all over, which, mathematically it looked like it was. Christian Horner was sacked as team principal in the middle of that patch because the Red Bull bosses couldn't see any way out of the slump that they were in. And it didn't look at that point like there was any way out of the slump that they were in. Laurent Mekies came in as team principal, and they started to make some progress, and they really got going from Monza onwards, made a little tweak to the floor of the car and the front wing, and suddenly Verstappen was able to be a consistent front runner, consistent winner. Was it 5 of the last 8 races he won? And when he's in that mood, he's, Zach Brown, the McLaren CEO, referred to him as like a villain in a horror movie. He just wouldn't stop getting up, right? And that's what he feels like for his rivals. The tweak, the improvements to the car were sort of definitely influenced by Laurent Mekies. Verstappen's explained that a couple of times now. So they became very formidable in the last part of the season. And that's what made the season so compelling, wasn't it? And Verstappen himself, what an extraordinary performance over 24 races. One blot to his copybook in Spain where he bumped wheels with George Russell in a sort of red mist moment that occasionally he has. He's admitted his regret about that now. It would be wrong to look at that as the reason he lost the championship, because, of course, there are a whole lot of other races that didn't go well for Red Bull, which had nothing to do with him. Still, it's something for him to learn from about too, and try and sort of make those things less common. Not that they are very common anymore, but he just underlined how powerful a force he is in Formula One, and I think many people think it was his best season.
I'm, as a driver, genuinely completely in awe of his skill level. I don't think I've ever seen anybody this fast ever in Formula One. He's so relentless. It's scary. It really is scary. If you give him the car, he's dominating. I think Mekies has done a really good job in galvanizing that team. I remember we did a podcast a couple of years ago when news came out about Christian Horner, and we were very downcast on the future of the Milton Keynes base team. But look, I think that when he picked up the reins after Silverstone, the decisions that he's made have been really strong. The one thing about Red Bull, though, is they are still a one-car team. And unless Max Verstappen wins every race, I can't see them challenging for a Constructors' Championship again. We'll see what Isaac Hadjar can do next year, but it is a one-car team right now.
It certainly is, but that will have to change to continue to fight, as you say, Sam. You mentioned, Andrew, a lot of people think this is maybe Max Verstappen's one of his best seasons, and ultimately he didn't get the prize at the end of the World Championship trophy. But to be only 2 points away, having been 104 points away after the Dutch Grand Prix, is there an argument to be made here that this is one of the greatest F1 comebacks we've seen?
I think it definitely is one of the best. I mean, he's 104 points behind at the end of Zandvoort when Norris was 34 points behind Piastri. And he came back and missed the championship by 2 points. So obviously Norris has gained on Piastri at that point, as well as Verstappen gaining on both of them. But that's an extraordinary performance. And it's all about sort of how high can you keep your average? And that's what he did this year. Even when the car was in a bad place, he maximised it. And you think back through the year at the sort of extraordinary performances he put in Japan, when he absolutely did the most perfect pole lap, when the McLaren was definitely the quicker car. Neither Norris nor Piastri quite got their laps right, and that was just give him a chink of light, Verstappen, and he's through there. And in it, he's on pole and won in that race. One of his most extraordinary performances of the year. Even Fernando Alonso was wowed by that pole lap, wasn't he, in the TV pen afterwards?
Only he could do that.
No one else could do that, exactly. And then Imola, the move at the start when he took the lead from Piastri. But in many ways, I think maybe his best performance of the year was one that he didn't win. And Brazil, he'd qualified down in, I can't remember what it was, somewhere 17th, was it? Something like that. Sure it was there. And he was writing off his championship hopes. And he came through the field in a dry race from 17th or wherever it was on the grid to finish third. And looked like he might get Antonelli for second.
Well, he started from the pit lane in the end, didn't he, in that race? It was pit lane to podium, wasn't it?
That's absolutely right, yeah.
So that was even more impressive in a way, although it kind of avoids any kind of lap one drama, but you
got more ground
so
to make
far
up.
behind.
Exactly, that's what was so impressive about it, yeah. So I think you could argue, actually, that was even better than his win from 16th. Sorry, it was his win from 17th, wasn't it, in Brazil in 2024 in the wet.
Yeah.
In the wet.
Because in the wet, it's kind of the gaps between drivers, they tend to be exaggerated, but in the dry, it's much harder to make those differences. And that's why I think that performance was so impressive.
I think, besides Barcelona, he's had pretty much a perfect year and extracted the maximum out of his package. And we're sat here at McLaren, and McLaren have done the job, and both drivers have delivered comfortably a Constructors' Championship, and Lando has won the drivers. But I think that, obviously, clearly, McLaren haven't fully maximised in terms of points they could have done. I think this could have been wrapped up quite a bit earlier for either Oscar or Lando had they fully maximised their season. McLaren have done it. They've won it, and it's incredible. But when you look at what Max has been able to do, he hasn't left really 1 point on the table. And I think it could be interesting going forwards to 2026. It might be one of those years where one of these McLaren drivers has to do the same thing.
It's been a good season, hasn't it? And
unreal.
With the numbers that we talk about there, the title fight going down to the wire, that all sounds great. But has it actually been, from a racing perspective, quite a good season on Grand Prix Sunday in the fight for a win?
Yeah, how many times recently have we said that there's 3 drivers potentially winning a championship going into the final race? It's exciting. That's what us fans want.
That's right. But I think what Harry's asking is, have there been many great races? And I think I would argue that you're right. You were sort of leading us in that direction, Harry.
So I don't want to lead you anywhere, Andrew,
think you're right. I don't think there have been that many great races. Silverstone was really interesting.
You guys are doom and gloom.
Well, there's a difference between an interesting season.
I get your
than
point.
a season packed with interesting races.
I do get your point.
And I don't think there were that many mega races through the year. All-time classics, if you like. There are a few. Obviously, there's quite a few Grand Prix that have gone down in history as all-time classics. I can't think of one this year that would. Maybe one of the audience can write in or something, but I can't think of one off the top of my head that would fit into that category.
Yeah, let us know wherever you're watching this, if you're listening to us, hashtag BBC F1, BBC YouTube channel, God knows where we'll end up, but there'll be a comment section somewhere. There's standout moments, but when it comes to the actual fight for a lead after the first couple of corners or so, it does feel like it peters away. I don't think it's been one of the worst seasons by any stretch of the imagination. I was having an argument with our producer about this on the way here, because he thinks it's been an absolute dross season. But I'd go back to when Max Verstappen won every race bar one. That's probably one of the, I would put that as worse in terms of an actual racing perspective on a Sunday.
Well, these are massive cars, let's not forget. Like, they're enormous. We're sat in front of the 2023 car currently, and it's a huge bit of kit. So, you know, you put 20 of these on a racetrack at the same time, and with the aero wash of the cars, the speeds that they're going, it's not a surprise that it's difficult to get really close racing in these cars. And that's why the FIA have designed the 2026 rules the way they have. They're hoping to get closer racing with smaller cars.
We're going to hear from McLaren team principal Andrea Stella very shortly. But from a team who had a season to remember to a season to forget, shall we talk about Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton? Is there any other word than dreadful, Sam, to use?
Well, Hamilton used the word nightmare, didn't he?
Oh, and nightmare.
So there you go.
Nightmare.
It's so hard because Lewis, I've worked with Lewis at Mercedes, and I've got so much respect for him. It was really difficult to watch. It was really difficult to watch him struggle and then mentally and internally look like he was having just the worst time. There's been times in my career where it's not going well, and then you have to take yourself away and go, well, why do I do what I do? And we do it because we love to go racing. And it looked to all the world like he'd fallen out of love with racing. And that's awful to think that one of the greatest ever looked like he didn't want to be there, and that might not be the case. I know he was trying his best, but he didn't figure out that car. The car wasn't good enough from Ferrari, and the gap between himself and Leclerc was quite big, actually. Surprisingly, I thought he'd be much closer to Leclerc than he was, and it fell away the last 4 Grand Prix. It was difficult.
I mean, well, out-qualified and out-raced by Leclerc. But obviously, first year with new surroundings, Andrew, and Ferrari's not just any other team, is it? It's a whole culture you've got to get to grips with. But particularly early on in the season, if we look at China as a case in point, where it was sort of day and night, because you had the high of winning the sprint for Lewis Hamilton on top in Ferrari colours for the first time. But then in the race and the disqualification, was that the undoing for Ferrari and this ride height issue, not being able to run as low as they would have liked?
Yeah, and I think if in hindsight we have to assume that the way he was able to win the sprint was because the car was set too low in terms of the skid plate surviving for the Grand Prix, because what happened in the Grand Prix was it got disqualified. His car anyway, they were both disqualified for different reasons. Hamilton's car was disqualified for excessive skid wear. But Ferrari's problem was that, I mean, all the cars need to be run as low as possible, basically. But Ferrari's problem was that it needed to be run too low to be competitive.
Well, look at Hungary, for example.
Well, I'm going to come to that in a minute, yeah. Exactly.
He'll get there.
And if they raised the car so that it wasn't going to bash its skid plates to bits during the course of the Grand Prix, then it wasn't quick enough. And there was a couple of really stark examples of that. So in Spain, they were looking reasonably competitive for the first 2/3 of the race, and suddenly Leclerc's pace dropped off and Hamilton's in the last stint, and they wouldn't talk about why. They were just like, well, we had a technical problem. It turned out what they'd done is they'd raised the tyre pressures to raise the car, so it was stopping banging its skids on the track for the final stint of the race. Similar thing, as Sam says, happened in Hungary. Leclerc was on pole there, and he was battling with Piastri for the win, or appeared to be battling with Piastri for the win for the first 2/3 of the race. Suddenly, he was like 2-3 seconds a lap off the pace in his final stint. And again, that was all about what they were doing, was they were limiting their top speed. So he wasn't allowed to go above a certain point, or he certainly wasn't going above a certain speed. I think it was around about 280 kilometres an hour. Because obviously the faster you go down the straight, the more downforce acts on the car, the lower it goes, the more the floor hits the ground, the more you wear the skids. So that was all about the same problem. They never really got on top of that, and one of the reasons they didn't get on top of it was because they realised early on they were not going to be competitive. So I think they stopped developing this car even earlier than McLaren did, put all their eggs in the 2026 basket, and it led them both, Leclerc and Hamilton, to have a very difficult year. And that average qualifying gap between Leclerc and Hamilton over the season, which was 0.15 seconds, which is much more than Lewis Hamilton would want. He would expect to be ahead, not 1.5 tenths behind his teammate. That was enough to mean that Hamilton ended up with a load of Q1 knockouts. He never got on the podium all year. For the first time in his career, it really was an annus horribilis for him. And I think the biggest question for me, having said that about all of that, is this is one of the most talented racing drivers there's ever been. And all through his career, and I'm sure Sam would say the same, he's been famed for his adaptability. And it makes no sense to me that he can't, in that context, the level of his talent, which is enormous, and the adaptability, which has been gobsmacking through most of his career, they just seem to desert him this year. And I don't understand why.
Well, we wait with bated breath to see what Ferrari do next year. Now, you'll notice during Benny's long answer there, it's all change on the lineup. Benson's dropped the jumper, and we are now joined by McLaren team principal Andrea Stella. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you.
How are you? You've done the double. Has it sunk in yet?
How we've done the double? Well, it's been, like this kind of achievements, they are just a culmination of a long journey, even if in truth the journey at McLaren is possibly the fastest journey ever from where we were 3 years ago to a double world championship. Certainly it's been extremely intense, like many things have happened in this time frame.
It's a lot. I know the guys have some questions here, but I just wanted to start off with, I think the question that I wanted personally an answer to, and we've been speaking to you all year. You're always very gracious in giving up your time, and there's this whole, we've talked about it a lot, the fairness first philosophy that you've been running between the two drivers this year, and you've done the unimaginable actually, and you've kept harmony between two drivers all the way to the bitter end, fighting for a title. I don't think it's really anything we've seen done before in Formula One. How hard has that been to manage internally for you?
Definitely makes you very busy. Definitely makes you very busy. You talked about fairness. I would say the other fundamental principle was equality, like give both drivers equal opportunities. And, we started the season already with some conversations in which we stated it's going to be difficult. Like this process of trying to keep equal opportunity for you, Lando and Oscar, is something that will challenge us. Is something, probably the only thing in this journey together, drivers and team, is the only thing in which our interests will not coincide. So the stake is high, the consequences can be important, we do have to stay responsible, even because Andrea Stella, Zach Brown, Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, none of us is nowhere near comparable to McLaren. Like McLaren is bigger than us. We need to behave with responsibility. These were the conversation we had at the start, and then many, many conversations through the season. Definitely is a process that makes you busy.
Andrea, I've obviously followed your career for many years. You were with Michael Schumacher at Ferrari. You were then engineering Kimi Raikkonen. You looked after Fernando Alonso at Ferrari before then joining McLaren. And now you've overseen this incredible turnaround with McLaren over the last 3 years. Where does this rank among your personal achievements?
Difficult to kind of, create an order as to. It definitely ranks very high, though, and this is because I'm in a different position now. Somehow, been before I was working with a driver. I was with a driver. I was in a team with very senior people, like Ferrari team. It was definitely great leadership there. So I was leading from a race engineering point of view, but kind of following some of the these great leaders that we had, including the drivers. The names you made, they also definitely led the team to the success that we had. Here, kind of look above and you say, oh, I'm actually the leader now. So Zach and myself, just we needed to unite the forces and make sure that we were clear about the vision, clear about how we want to pursue our aspirations. And we talked about the challenges that came with trying to offer Lando and Oscar the same opportunities, while certainly there were opinions that this was not possible. So in the end, you feel like, yeah, I've contributed a lot. It has definitely costed a lot of energy, but very rewarding. So definitely I would rank it as one of the most fulfilling and one of the achievements that makes me most proud.
I think it's incredible what you've achieved. We could talk to you, I think, for hours on end, Andrea, but we're going to have to let you go. I just want to ask that before you go, we should touch on Oscar as well. You know, we've mentioned him already, but we were having this discussion at the start of our show. Okay, he missed out in the end, but only his third season in Formula One, and his rate of development in between each season as well has been so notable. How have you looked on Oscar Piastri's first 3 years with McLaren, this fight, and do you expect him to bounce back quite strong next year?
Oscar will be definitely stronger next year. Oscar will win championships at McLaren in the future. He has all it takes. The rate, I've always said that the rate of development tells me why he won a championship at the first year in the junior categories. His capacity to adapt, his capacity to analyze what is needed, got it, I'll go out and do it, and he does it, is no short than exceptional. And I think this year, Oscar, for 2/3 of the season, has been the most consistent. We then went to tracks that challenged Oscar from a technical point of view. Like, you know, the low grip circuits required a driving style that came so natural for Lando and so much to think for Oscar, like, that's what the car needs. It doesn't come natural to me. I'll have to think how I do it in an automatic way. And with the level of drivers we have at the moment, as soon as you have to think too much in the way you drive, you lose several positions. But I think really the only event in which Oscar had some hesitations this year is just Baku. I think all the rest, in my view, it has some technical explanations. It has to do with the level overall of drivers that we have, and for the impact of not being perfect, not being to the last 1%. And also Oscar showed maturity, once again, in the way he withstood the difficulties we had as a team, which, once again, are quite impressive for somebody who is at the third season in Formula One, and gives me the chance to thank Oscar and Lando for how they stayed supportive of the team. And like I say, if we made it, I think we made it not in the events in which we gained the points, but in the way we dealt with the events in which we lost the points. And ultimately we did it, we were discussing this morning with the team, by less than 0.5%, 2 points over more than 400. This shows that you know, how marginal this game, how competitive this game is, which is obviously also a message to, at least for us, we said it's a message for us to do better, because we would like to be slightly more comfortable in the future.
Well, look, Andrea, try and enjoy a bit of downtime, but we look forward to catching up with you in 2026.
Cool. No problem. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Always brilliant to hear and speak to Andrea Stella, isn't it? He's just such a good talker, isn't he, Andrew?
He's one of the best communicators in Formula One. I've known him for a very long time now, and for a long time it's quite interesting to see how he's changed. For a long time he didn't talk to the media at all, and at one point I tried to talk to him when he was at Ferrari, and he was just like, he wasn't impolite, but he was just like very clear. But then it's slowly through, as he's got more and more senior at McLaren, he's got into that role, and he really you can see that he really values what it can do for him, the communication, and he's so good. And I think they've created a new level of transparency at McLaren with the public. You know, normally Formula One has traditionally it's always been about secrecy. in McLaren, they're much more open than a Formula One team normally is. I mean, the suspension change to Norris's car that you were talking about earlier, Harry, is a really good case in point. It was only a tiny change to the geometry where the wishbone meets the upright. But they talked about it happening. They talked about when it came. They talked about which driver had it and why. All this stuff about the numbness of the front axle. It's been an absolute privilege to deal with them all year, actually.
For me, he's an outstanding leader of men, Harry. You just think there's 1,000 people here, looking to him and Zach Brown, and his leadership has taken it from where it was 3-4 years ago, where they weren't going to finish races at the beginning of that year, to winning multiple world championships, and that's through his and Zach's leadership.
Yeah, Andrea mentioned it in his interview. The quickest route from basically, he didn't put it quite like this, but what he was basically saying was the quickest route from the back of the field to the front, and he's not wrong. You know, they started 2023 in Bahrain. They had an absolute nightmare that race, and they were pretty much at the back. 6 months later, not even 6 months, that was March. By June or early July in Austria, that was the famous big upgrade. That was the start of McLaren being at the front of the field or close to the front of the field. And the development and trajectory has just been upwards, like not vertically, but pretty close to vertical ever since. And now they're double constructors champions, driver and constructors championship double this year. It's been an absolutely outstanding achievement.
You would have missed with the Swish editing when we let Andrea go. Sam was having an in-depth chat with him in the corner. Were you fluffing up a bit? You're going to get a young driver test next year?
Young driver test.
You still got it. If Fernando Alonso can do a rookie test,
do
you can.
the old driver test. No, we were just having a chat.
Yeah, lovely work. Anyway, right, we can't do a review of the year pod without some honourable mentions for the rest of the field. I want one from each of you. We'll all give one. So should we start with you, Andrew? Honourable mention for somebody outside of the top contenders?
Very impressive season from Williams. They locked down 5th place in the Constructors' Championship with a really strong first part of the season. That was a lot to do with Alex Albon. And then obviously Carlos Sainz, as he integrated himself in the team, he had a really strong second half of the season with 2 podium finishes. I think Sainz said himself if you'd told him that he was going to get 2 podiums in his first year at Williams, because obviously if you remember back when he was making the decision, it was very difficult for him to choose between Sauber, which was becoming Audi, Alpine and Williams. He went for Williams. He said he would have signed much faster if he'd known that. They've made a lot of progress, and that was even when they weren't really even thinking about 2025. It's been all about 2026 for Williams. Their sort of outward communication, they're talking about that as an opportunity to move to the front of the field. Don't forget they're going to have a Mercedes engine next year, so keep an eye out for them, along with McLaren, of course, and Mercedes themselves. So yeah, that's my honourable mention. Really outstanding season from them.
Bird, what about you?
Well, going on to what Andrew said, Carlos Sainz, every team that he's been to, he then transforms and improves. You look at where they were before and where they were after Carlos, and he always leaves a team in a better state. But my honourable mention is going to be Isaac Hadjar. I think that when he arrived in Australia, obviously a huge disappointment out there, but he's come on leaps and bounds throughout the year, and he's been rewarded with the number 2 seat at Red Bull, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
We'll see about that in about 6 months.
Yeah, but he's done a stunning job. He got his first podium in Zandvoort, and I think he's been, in my eyes, Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that one. I love a battle for 6th in the Constructors' Championship.
You really do, don't you?
It was another fierce fight, won out by Racing Bulls, only 3 points clear of Aston Martin.
Yeah, they come on really strong at the end. Fernando Alonso had 2 great races in the last 2 races.
But I feel like you've sort of taken all the moments. I wanted to say Hadjar, I wanted to say Williams. I'll try and be different and maybe go for an Ollie Behrman, shall we say. We'll go for an Oliver Behrman. I think showed some real flashes of good performance, particularly with Mexico, wasn't it? Where he nearly found himself on the podium at one point. So
I think it's not going to be too long before we see him in Ferrari red.
All right, you heard it here first. Actually, you said that a few weeks ago as well on the pod. So you heard it here a few weeks ago first. Yeah. Right, we are at the end of our 2025 season review show. Before we leave you, though, we have to get our team season highlights. Now, of course, there are many members of the BBC F1 team, and not everybody could join us today. But let's hear from some of them now, highlighting their favourite moments.
I'm Jenny Gow, and I wanted to say my favourite moment of the season has to be the moment Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari stood on the podium on the top spot in China. Yes, it was a sprint race, and yes, it was the high point, and there have only seemed to be lows from that point onwards. But next year, hopefully, Ferrari will turn things around and Lewis will be back on the top of the podium. Fingers crossed.
Hi, it's Rosanna Tennant here. My favourite moment of the season has to be the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, especially the ending when Lando Norris took his first Formula One driver's title. I was down in the pit lane and under the podium as the celebrations were going on, and it was incredible to see Lando Norris finally show some emotion, and of course to see all the McLaren team celebrating together, having done the double. It was a spectacular evening.
Hey, I'm Mark Priestley, and I've got to say, I agree with Rosanna, and I agree for really personal reasons. I was very lucky to be at McLaren the last time that group of people shared that experience, the experience we saw them having in Abu Dhabi when Lando crossed the line to become world champion. We did it with Lewis Hamilton, but it was all the way back in 2008. That's a long time ago. So it means that the women and men at McLaren have been working so hard in the background for such a long period of time, and yet have never tasted that particular level of success. It feels amazing. So seeing them do it a week or so ago just filled my heart with joy. I'm so proud of them. I'm so happy for them. So that is my moment of the year. Well done, Lando. Well done to everybody at McLaren.
Hi guys, I hope you're having a good time at McLaren and you've not stolen any of the incredible race cars that are out in reception. My favourite moment of 2025, why are you making me pick one? I would have to go for, so many moments. I'm going to go for Nico Hülkenberg's first podium. The British Grand Prix, full of drama, as it has been for the last several years. But for a driver to get their first podium in Formula One after so many races, I know we've had firsts this year, of course, with Kimi Antonelli being one of those, Hadjar as well, but for Hülkenberg, that's been in Formula One for so long, to finally get his podium, I think it's fantastic. So that's my moment of the season.
Thank you very much to all of the team members there and everyone who's joined us on air this season. You heard Alice Powell at the end there mentioning Nico Hülkenberg's podium. Strong contender for a favourite moment of the season, wouldn't you say?
Strong, but not my favourite.
No? What is your favourite then? One standout moment.
I'll let Benny go first on this. What's your standout moment, Benny?
Well, that's a real tough one, Sam. I mean, I'm going to go for Verstappen's overtake on lap 1 at Imola. That was a big wow moment. Yeah.
As a McLaren driver throughout 2024 and 2025, it's difficult for me to look past Lando Norris winning his first world title. I mean, as a young driver, it's what you dream of. So I kind of felt it with him and for him. To get that, it must feel incredible. I'll never achieve what he's achieved, but I'm so pleased and proud for him.
It's a very fair case. I think my moment of the year, it was going to be Nico Hülkenberg's podium as well, because that was just sensational to watch, actually, in that amazing race. But I think my moment of the year, and I'm really hoping it ends up in next season's Drive to Survive, is when we're all outside the McLaren hospitality, waiting for news of the disqualification, where our producers, Joe and Patrick, are trying to do the permutations. What would happen if they were both disqualified? Where would the title be won? And in comes a boom mic and a camera, and it's all being documented by Netflix. So I cannot wait for that to come out. I think that's my moment of the year. Right, I think we're done though. So thank you very much for your company. Thank you very much to McLaren for hosting us. I need to do a shout out as well to Pete, our sound engineer for the last 7 years as he heads off into a retirement. So enjoy your retirement, Pete, and your runarounds in your Lamborghini. Right, we're going to see you all in 2026. We'll do it all over again, but it's the start of a new era in Formula One and we cannot wait. And don't worry, while the Chequered Flag podcast takes a break during the off-season, there will be plenty of content filling the feed in the off-season. Back at Base is going to be right back here for Season 3 in January, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And you can also listen back to Season 2 of Back at Base now on BBC Sounds. But from all of us, happy holidays. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.